People will not recommend it. It will have a horrible Rate My Professor. Now that I have this, I don't even need this super fancy MacBook. A really good thing to do when you're studying with friends. A little side note about ChatGPT, there was a higher chance of me getting into that class that like everyone wanted. I'll Command F to make a relationship with your professor. I personally am not good at it. Give you games, different ways that you can study. For note-taking apps specifically, all the products. I have a lot, as you can see. Hi everyone, I'm Audrey. I am currently a senior at the University of Texas, which actually in less than a month I will not be a student at UT Austin anymore, which is crazy, but that's why I wanted to create this video. These are all of my college study tips. We're gonna walk through all of the products that I use and that I have found to be like very helpful in my 4 years, and then note-taking apps, note-taking strategies, if you're doing it on paper, or if you're doing it on an iPad, or if you're typing it, and why I choose different methods depending on the classes. Speaking of classes, we're going to talk about registering for classes and planning your schedule and just some tips on that, because your schedule and the professor you have can really make or break your semester experience. And then also talking a little bit about professor relationships, and then ending with some general study tips that I didn't cover in all the sections before. I am a corporate communications major and a media and entertainment industries minor, so I'm in the Moody College of Communications at UT. I'm from California, so I got into UT out of state. I actually did probably, I think 2 or 3 years ago, a whole video about like my high school stats and all the colleges I applied to and whatnot, so if you're interested in looking at that, I have that up. But this again is just going to be general college tips. Okay, I think let's just get into it. I'm first going to talk about note-taking and note-taking apps and just like technology things that I love that have made my life so much easier. So to start, we're going to talk about Google Chrome. Okay, a lot of times your school email will be a Google email, and if not, you can just make a Google address. But the Google suite, once you familiarize yourself with it, it is so nice. I have a bunch of different Google accounts. I have my personal email, I have my business email, and then I have my school email, and then some others like that branch off from that. And what's so nice is I download Google Chrome onto all my computers, and I can make different Chrome profiles and have them be different colors, so I'm never confused what email address I'm on. And then I also have bookmarks on my personal email. I have my rent portal bookmarked and some other random things, but then on my school email I have all my textbooks bookmarked. I have my like school portal. I just have everything like very easily organized under that one email address and under that one Chrome profile. Something that I also love that I think is so underrated by Google is Google Keep. It is my favorite to-do list note-taking app. I have the app on my phone, so like when I quickly want to do a to-do list, it's always at my fingertips. But then because it's under my Google email, I can log into it on my computer or any other device. And I feel the same way about Google Calendar. It just really helps me stay all up to date and everything is synced under the account. If you have all Apple devices, the Reminders app can do that too. You can make really cool lists on that, and then through your iCloud it'll link. And then I also just use my Notes app on my phone too. It really just depends whether I reach for Google Keep or Notes, but any notes that I take on my phone will sync to my iPad or my computer because of iCloud. So that's also just very like an organizational tip. Everything that no matter what device I'm on, it'll sync to the next one. Okay, then more for note-taking apps specifically, like when I'm in class and writing on my iPad. I love Notability. I originally got it freshman year when I think there was just a one-time fee, and now it might be subscription based. There's just a lot of different paper options, pencil options, and you can organize it. A lot of the note-taking apps I'm going to say are like pretty similar. There's also GoodNotes, which this like has a newer version that I think is also a subscription where there's AI within it, which I think is really cool, and it can kind of mimic your handwriting. But there's different tiers of your membership, so you can choose like how basic you want your note-taking apps to be. Then also something that's on all Apple devices for free is Freeform. I use this a lot for like collages, but it also is great for to-do lists, like bullet journaling, and you could use it for class because you can kind of just format it and put in papers the way you want to. With all of these apps, I love to put in my teacher's slides, especially for like a STEM like math class where you're going through problems or diagrams and you want to take your own notes on top while the teacher's talking or while you're watching lessons or doing your homework. And a lot of teachers will give you access to the PDFs of the slides, so you'll already have that, and then you can easily, instead of printing them out, which you could if you don't have an iPad, but you can just download them onto your iPad and write on top of them. That just like leads me into note-taking as a whole. So I mentioned I either write on paper on my iPad or I'll take notes on my computer. In the scenarios when I take notes just typing on my computer on a Google Doc is when I know the quizzes or the tests are open note, which actually for me I like had probably half the time in college. Typing it on a doc makes it a lot easier to search while you're taking the test. So I'll Command F my notes or the slides. It'll take me exactly to that point in my notes where I talked about the subject. So if there is a question about a specific author and I know I wrote notes about it, I will type in that author's name and it'll bring me to that section of my notes. And so for classes like that, I love to type my notes, but for classes that aren't open note, I prefer to write them on my iPad, especially if there's slides or diagrams or math problems. But also if it's a very like definition based class where I have to remember a lot of things, the actual act of writing out your notes will help you remember it so much better than typing it. So I really only do typing when I know I'll be able to Command F and search through them, because if not, it's way harder for me to study off those notes, and typing it just doesn't sink in to my brain as much as physically writing it out. Okay, so just like the note-taking specifically, successful note-taking will depend on the class that you're taking, and so it's important to kind of be flexible and trying different note-taking styles out. A lot of times this is a learning process throughout the semester, and the more you take the class, once you take that first quiz or that first test and you know what type of questions are going to be on that test, then you can kind of cater to what you should be taking your notes on and how detailed you need to be about your notes. If the professor is really taking their test and quiz questions off of their slides and what's like physically in the book, or if it's really based on like the words that they say that maybe aren't written down in the slides or in the book, so you'll know like what pieces of the class that are important for you to write down so that you can then study later. Okay, which leads me to studying for tests. I feel like honestly high school really prepared me for college. I think throughout high school everyone was talking about how college was going to be so much different, but I really do think like all of the things you learn leading up to college does prepare you for these classes, and also throughout the class they will teach you the things you need to know to be successful in the class most of the time. So studying for tests, I love to use Quizlet. I actually have had a Quizlet Pro account since high school. I think it's like $20 a year. What's nice about Quizlet is you can make your own study sets, which is just really nice to also make you review all of the things that you need to know by physically typing it in, and then they give you games and like different ways that you can study more than just like flashcards. But also if you don't have time for that or just don't want to do that, there are a lot of public Quizlets that other people have made. So typically if you type in your subject or the chapter you're on, there will be Quizlets with questions that may be on your quiz or test, especially for last minute studying when you don't have time to make your own cards and you just want to review. You can look up someone else's set of cards. Another way to study for tests is using ChatGPT. There's a lot of ways that you can use AI these days for college, but specifically for tests, you can ask it to give you test questions, kind of like a practice exam about a particular topic. A little side note about ChatGPT, I think that it's a great resource for inspirational things. So especially my major is very writing based. I would never like put in my prompt and just use a whole AI written thing, but it is great to ask for like, give me ideas for a research topic about blank, or you can have it edit your already written assignment and make it longer, make it shorter. There are ways that ChatGPT can really help you. You just kind of have to be careful to make sure you're still doing your own work so it's not considered cheating. Okay, then actually physically studying for these tests, you need to figure out if you work better with other people or not, and it's okay either way. For me, it really depends on the mood I'm in. Sometimes I love to just be by myself in complete silence. Other times I like to go with someone to a coffee shop where it's kind of loud, but my friend is working on something and I'm working on something else, so we're not talking together. And then also there are times where I am studying for a test and it is nice to like physically talk through things with someone else who's also taking that same test and studying for the same thing, but you just have to be careful that the people you're with don't get you off track. So if every time you study with someone you know you get nothing done, then you need to know that about yourself and do what's best for you. I really like getting out of my room or freshman year out of my dorm and going on campus or going to a coffee shop nearby to study. I think the change of scenery is really helpful and just puts your brain into a focus mode. There are so many places on campus that you have access to as a student to be able to study, whether it be outside in a library or just in like different buildings wherever there's a table and chair. I even like to sometimes go into empty classrooms if it's late at night and I know there's no classes, or at Moody, my college, you can see the schedule of the room. I literally will just go into a lecture hall and have the whole hall to myself. So changing up your scenery is very nice and it kind of tells your brain like, okay, we just left my bedroom. It's not time to watch TV. It's not time for TikTok. It is time to study or do work and do my homework. This is also a good reminder if you're starting to get fatigued and tired when you're studying to get up. It's okay to take breaks, make sure you're eating, make sure you're drinking, but then also moving locations just to kind of keep you stimulated and awake. Okay, next we are going to talk about registration tips. Registering for classes in college is honestly some of the most stressful times for me. I feel like it can be very overwhelming. At UT, it's like all up to us on what classes we take and making sure that we are taking the classes that we need to graduate. I always meet with my advisor. It's not required at UT, and so you do kind of have to plan ahead of like, okay, when's my advisor available to me and what questions do I have to ask them, and kind of going into your advisor meeting knowing what classes you want to take so that they can kind of give you advice of whether that's good or not. At UT, the older you get and the closer you are to graduating, the earlier you can register, and so when you're a freshman or sophomore, you're really registering a lot later than everyone else, and so your classes are filling up, and so it's always nice to go in and make sure you have all of the classes planned that you want to register for and backups for all of those classes and making sure your schedule fits. So when you're going to look at classes, I would really suggest looking at Rate My Professor, especially because a lot of classes, there'll be more than one professor you can choose from, and you can kind of see which professor would match your style better based on the reviews. And then also UT gives you access to past syllabi, so you can go in and see last year's syllabus and see what the assignments are like, what the tests are like, what the attendance policy is like, and that is really helpful when deciding which classes I want to take. Also, when I'm choosing my schedule, I will ask my friends and people I know in my major if they've taken that class before and if they recommend it or not. There are some classes where people will not recommend it. It will have a horrible Rate My Professor and it's just a class that you have to take, but it's still nice to know these things to see how heavy your semester is going to be. So if you have 3 classes that there's just one professor, it's really hard, everyone says it's a really hard class, you don't want to put all 3 of those classes in the same semester because that's going to be a really hard semester for you. And so really thinking ahead and planning out your years in college and your semesters and thinking, okay, how many hours do I want to take in this semester? Like, how many hours do I need to take to graduate on time? How will I get all of my courses in? And what will be the best way for me to do that? This brings me to my next tip for Gen Ed classes, which basically are usually the ones that you take freshman and sophomore year that almost everyone at your school has to take. So like, for example, I had to take 1 history and I had to take 3 sciences, and it didn't matter what I took, I just had to take them even though I wasn't a history major or I wasn't a science major. For these, you can really get stuck with a really bad class or a really easy good class. So for example, my 3 sciences, I took really fun, highly recommended sciences that a lot of people took who weren't science majors, and so it was a lot easier for me versus my history class I signed up for and it was actually awful and I got the worst grade. I literally almost failed it. And so my point of this is I think it's worth it to wait to take Gen Eds if the one that you want to take isn't available and you have that flexibility to take another class that is required for your degree and save it for later. So if I hadn't been so set on taking that history class my first semester of sophomore year, and I would have just waited and taken another class towards my degree, I could have gotten into a better history that was probably more interesting, not online, not like a crazy amount of like essays and assignments, in a class that my friends had taken that was really easy that they would recommend, if I would have just waited and taken it next semester and had been at a point in registration where I was registering earlier than other people, and so there was a higher chance of me getting into that class that like everyone wanted. My last little registration tip is check to see if the platform that your school uses has a Google extension. So UT has one called UT registration. It's just a Google extension, and it'll show you links to Rate My Professor and the past syllabi and just like the grade averages and stuff like that. And then you can add courses to your schedule, and it'll show you kind of your hours and map out your schedule for you, which is very, very helpful, especially because registration can be really overwhelming, just figuring out days and times and what classes are available. So I would definitely look and ask around to see if your school has something like that, because it really makes a huge difference. Speaking of scheduling, planning your schedule, there are some times where you will have no choice but to take an 8 a.m. or an afternoon class, but there are also times where different classes, especially gen ed ones, will have a lot of different times and days that you can take. And so really planning out your schedule, thinking about meal times and thinking about how long your days are going to be. I know some people love to put all their classes on Tuesday, Thursday, so that they have easy Monday, Wednesday, Fridays so that they can work or whatnot. I personally don't like having a super long day. I would rather kind of spread it out throughout the week, so I have more gaps in the middle of my days to kind of take a break between classes. So just planning what your days are actually going to look like and how long they're going to be. And then also, if you're doing back-to-back classes, looking at the locations of those classes and making sure that you have enough time to go from the first class to the second, because they might be all the way across campus. Then my last little overall thing about scheduling. So I am really a morning person. So for the longest time, I was signing up for classes that started super early in the morning because I was like, oh, I'm going to be up and at it and I won't mind going to class that early, which is so true. Like, I was up and ready to go, but I realized I actually like to take classes in the afternoon and use that morning time to work on assignment and study and do homework, because that is when my brain is the best, versus I don't really do well in the afternoon or studying into late nights if I don't have to. And so having that time in the morning to work out and get my stuff done before I have to go to class actually works a lot better for me than going to class and then coming home at a time where my brain is not as great and having to do all those things after. I don't know if that makes sense, but when planning out your schedule, you're going to learn the more you go along and with each semester of kind of what you like in your days. And also, again, sometimes you just won't even have the choice and you'll just have to take that 8 a.m. I wrote down some tips for relationships with professors. I feel like everyone always says, like, make a relationship with your professor, and it's so true. I personally am not good at it at all, but I have tried and I have put myself out there. It really is beneficial for the professor to know your name, especially in really big classes. I feel like I've been really good at making relationships with professors in smaller classes, but I still could have done better in the big lecture halls. So don't be scared to meet with them. They have office hours for a reason, even if you're going in and just introducing yourself, getting to know them, or if you do have questions about the content or the assignments. When you meet with them, go in with questions you want to ask or just things you want to talk about, because if you don't, it can be kind of awkward based on my experience. And so it's best to just like go in prepared about what you're going to talk about, because you're scheduling the meeting with them. They're not going to lead the conversation, but they still love when you do that. Like, again, they have the office hours and want to meet with you for a reason. So there's that. You also like can just introduce yourself at the beginning of classes. I personally like to wait till the second or third class, because on the first class I feel like everyone introduces and there's like such a long line after class, and so still like within the first 2 weeks, so that they have a name to a face. And I typically just say like who I am, what year I am, and that I'm excited to take the class. And then also, not only relationships with professors, but relationships with TAs are really important too. A lot of times in college, these TAs are grading your stuff and can help you if you have grading questions. And also, a lot of times the TAs, like, requirement is that they took the class before. So they're a really good resource if you need help or have questions and your professor doesn't have time or you don't necessarily want to talk to the professor. You can ask the TA, and they are more your age and more of a peer, and they can really help you. Okay, general study tip. Some of these are, like, I guess I could have said for studying for tests, but they're just like kind of my general advice. One is make friends in your classes. This can be a really great way to just meet friends outside of the social organizations you're in, or your friends outside of class. Even if it's not that type of friendship, having friends in the class is really helpful for if you have to miss class or if you're just confused on something. Having a contact who is in the same class that can help you with what's going on is really helpful. They will probably want the same, so don't be scared to like ask for someone's number and sit with someone and get to know them on a personal level so that y'all can be that helpful thing for each other. Some more study tips. Music. I know some people love to listen to music and some people can't listen to music and focus, and I'm kind of an in-between. When I want to listen to music when I'm working, I like to listen to karaoke versions or just instrumental versions. I love turning on like a karaoke Taylor Swift playlist. So it's songs I'm familiar with, but I don't get distracted by the words. Then also when I'm not feeling motivated to do work at all and cannot get in the zone and just keep getting distracted, there is this method. There's a specific name for it. Maybe I'll try to find it, but it's where you set a timer to work for 30 minutes and then you get a 5-minute break. So I'll set a timer for 30 minutes, put my phone away, and force myself to focus on whatever I'm doing, and then I know I will have that break when the 30 minutes goes off. I find that this, like, one, makes the 30 minutes go by really, really fast, knowing that there's a break on the end of it. And this is also a really good thing to do when you're studying with friends. If you do tend to talk a lot and like get distracted, setting a timer where it's like, we're not going to talk for the next 30 minutes, we're just focusing together, and then having that 5-minute break to talk and just kind of get off topic again and stuff, and then once the timer goes off, getting back to focusing. Another general tip I have is don't be afraid to ask for help. My college has a lot of resources for like writing workshops and things like that. There have been a lot of times where I've met one-on-one with a writing coach that my school just offers for free, and they're so helpful. So I would really take advantage of these programs and these resources that a lot of universities have available for their students, because I feel like those are underrated and people don't take advantage of them. And even if they're not helpful, it does not hurt to try, because most of the time, in my experience, they are very helpful. I'm just going to talk about all the products and just devices I've used in college. I have a lot. As you can see, I have 3 computers and 2 iPads, not by necessity. Like, all of these work completely fine. I just have accumulated more for various reasons, but I could have stayed with 1 computer and no iPad, or just the original iPad I got all throughout 4 years, because these last so long and I would really recommend them. So all of these are Apple products, which I love. I have an iPhone, so it just makes it very, very easy to have everything synced. But I will say, in college, you either want an iPad or a computer. Especially now, there's a lot of like hybrid classes. You're just going to be doing a lot on your devices in class and outside of class, and so I would say it's definitely a necessity. I'm going to talk about computers first, but you can kind of do everything on an iPad if you have one of the bigger, nicer ones, but I personally like the combo of having a computer and an iPad. The first computer that I had coming in to college, I got this like my senior year of high school. This is the 13-inch MacBook Pro. Again, I got it probably in 2018 or 2019, so it is an older version. I will link like all of the exact products below, but this computer is great. It works great. The only reason why I decided to get to the next one is because this like processor and stuff, when I was editing for YouTube Final Cut Pro, it was crashing a lot. Like, I couldn't do a lot on this at once. So I will say, like, if you are just doing school and you are in a major where you don't have to download a bunch of other softwares, this would be great. But if you are more in a major where, for example, in one of my advertising classes, I had to download all of the Adobe suite. If you are like film major for Final Cut Pro or Premiere, I know in one of my textiles and apparels classes, I had to download like a bunch of CAD software to use like the 3D printers and stuff like that, and this computer would not have kept up its speed as much. So that's why I decided to get this computer, which is the MacBook Pro M2 chip. This one is fancy and I spent a lot of money on it because, again, I wanted just a faster editing experience with Final Cut Pro, and then it was really great because I did take those classes where I had to download all the softwares onto this, and it has kept up so well. I do have like the lower end on storage just because I maximize my hard drive. Most of my storage space comes from my YouTube stuff and not from my school stuff, so I didn't really need that much storage space. Then recently I got the brand new MacBook Air M3 chip. This is the best of all worlds. Now that I have this, I don't even need this like super fancy MacBook Pro because the M3 chip works so great with Final Cut Pro, works great with all of the softwares and the downloads. Because it's the MacBook Air, it's also so much lighter. Like, I love taking this to class. It doesn't weigh down my backpack or my tote bag, which I'll talk about in a sec. But yeah, their new M3 chip is amazing. You can also get a MacBook Pro with their M3 chip, which would just be like outstanding, I'm sure. But this color, you can kind of see it's a little different. This is in Starlight, which I also love that the new MacBooks come in the color Starlight because I feel like it's just a really pretty in-between of rose gold and silver. I'm trying to think what else this computer has. The last two both have Touch ID, so I can get in with my fingerprint. It really is great. When I got this MacBook Air, I honestly didn't have that much hope for it, but I've been editing on this. I've been opening a ton of apps, and it works just as good as my fancy MacBook Pro M2 chip. That's my computer spiel. Again, I'll link links below. Apple does like student pricing and student discounts. I think it's called like education pricing, and so I'll link those pages too because you can get a good deal pretty much on all the Apple products I'm going to show. Next, we're going to talk about my iPads. Okay, this iPad I got freshman year of college. It was honestly such an impulse buy, but I am so glad I bought it because it really changed so much. So it's one of the earlier generations. I really don't know which one, but it still has like the button. It is compatible with the first generation Apple Pencil, but that's it. So the newer pencils aren't compatible with it. This was a great starting point for me. I basically exclusively took notes on this. I really didn't use it for anything else. Going from taking notebooks from class to class to writing my notes on this was just so nice. Then I recently got this iPad 10th generation. I can't really see it with the case. I'll link my cases below too. This really pretty blue color, but my case is great. It has a keyboard that attaches to it. So when you get a case like this, it does feel like more computer vibes. With this iPad, I have the new Apple USB-C pencil. And this is kind of a more affordable pencil than even just the first generation regular pencil. This one kind of takes more of your like weight and is really for like if you're an artist and drawing, versus this one is perfect like if you're just writing notes, which is what I mainly use it for. But something I love about Apple pencils is like when you're writing, it knows the difference between the pencil in your hand, so you can like rest your hand on the iPad while you're writing, and so it really just feels like you are writing with a paper and a pen. Especially on this one, I added a screen protector that feels like paper, and I love the experience of taking notes on my iPad. Other little supplies for the first couple months when I didn't have my iPad, or if some professors don't allow electronics, which is pretty rare, and also if they are like that, typically they are fine if you have your iPad like face down and are only taking notes on it. But I love just a 5-subject spiral. I basically have been using this all 4 years when I need paper or when I just need to write something down. I don't get a ton of different notebooks per subject like I did in high school, just because then it's like way more complicated carrying things around. But again, that will also be dependent on your major and how much like paper you use in your given class. Then one of my favorite little like to-do list things, this is from Papier. It's the best notepad ever. It's just a little like rip off. I do all of my to-do lists on here when I'm writing them out, so love that. Then for accessories, I have a laptop case. This is the best one that I have ever experienced and gone through. It's this leather case from Amazon. It also comes with a lot of different accessories. So it comes with this mouse pad and a couple little like pouches for like your cords or chargers or whatnot. So we'll link this below. I love this. This fits both my 14-inch and my 13-inch laptop. Then I also love my little Apple Magic Mouse. This is definitely definitely not necessary, but I really like using this, especially if I'm spending a lot of time on my computer and doing a lot. Finger kind of gets tired like clicking on the mouse, and this is just a lot more comfortable. Then for headphones, I have Apple AirPod Pros. For a while at the beginning of college, I just had the standard AirPods. I really like the Pros though because of the noise canceling aspect. When I'm on campus and it's super loud and I'm trying to study or in a coffee shop or whatnot, this is really great. Then I recently got these Sony headphones. I'll link the exact name below because it's a bunch of like numbers and letters. I really wear these most when I'm traveling. I don't really use it for studying, but it is like a more comfortable experience. I think like sometimes after a while my AirPods will sometimes hurt my ears, and so this is another like great headphone option. And the battery lasts so long on these. Okay, last two things, talking about like what I would carry all of this stuff in. My first couple years of college, or just on the days where I have a lot of classes and I'm just gonna be out and about, I bring this North Face Borealis backpack, I think is what it is. Yeah, this has lasted me all 4 years. It is truly the best. I also travel with this a lot. Like I'll use it as my carry-on. So much space, a laptop sleeve, a big pocket, and then some smaller pockets at the front, and it's just really comfortable. It fits my water bottle on the side, and this is just like a really, again, high quality backpack. I've had it for so long and it's still in great condition. But when I'm not really walking far or bringing a lot of stuff, I've tended to also just kind of leave the house with a little tote bag and just put my computer and my iPad. So it's really just preference, but I will say if you are out and about and walking around campus, it's the most comfortable to have a nice backpack like the North Face, just because it's better for your back, and then it also just will fit everything and it won't feel as heavy versus a tote bag. If I like pack a ton of stuff in my tote bag, it will kind of start hurting my back. I think that's every tool, technology, gadget I use. Again, we'll link it all below, especially the stuff that I forgot. Then some Apple tips, like I mentioned, I was gonna say earlier. The education pricing, again, that's such a great hack. Your school also might offer discounts at their computer store as well. Something that's really nice having all of your devices synced and connected is the copy and paste function. So if I copy something on my phone and hit paste on my computer, it'll paste whatever I copied on my phone, which I love. I can't even like give you a specific example of when I use this, but I probably use this feature like every single day. And then also another little hack is when I'm writing a paper and I have my thoughts in my head and I just don't want to sit and write it, I will use speech to text. So that's when you can just talk into your phone or into your computer or into your iPad, and it'll take the words that you're saying and write it out. That was long, but I think I gave all the tips that I have. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I hope it was really helpful. I'm going to try to organize it to where hopefully you could have just gone to the parts of the video that you wanted to, but if you watched the whole thing, thanks. I really hope that it was helpful and you learned a lot. Even though I'm graduating, I am still going to be doing a lot of content and going into post-grad and just kind of how all of those dynamics are, so make sure to subscribe on here and also follow me on Instagram or TikTok or all the other things. I also have a blog. Everything will be linked below. College is so fun. I have learned so much. I think that when you first start a class, it can be really intimidating looking at a syllabus and seeing the huge projects at the end and seeing the like big finals, and I often think like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do that. Like, how am I going to pull this off? And that's the whole point of college. Like, you're there to learn, and these professors will hopefully set you up throughout the semester so that when you do get to that final project, you feel prepared and knowledgeable to complete it. There were so many times at the beginning of the semester where they would talk about final projects at the end, and I'd be like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to write a 10-page paper on blank. And then throughout the semester I learn, and it ends up being a lot more feasible than it once was. So that's just my little encouragement. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I will see y'all in my next video. Bye.